Hello everybody, welcome to the Nerd Relay. I'm Tom, and today we will be talking about the season finale of Better Call Saul, and also kind of discuss things that happened over the season. Basically, this is just going to be the entire Season 2 review. To start off, let's talk about that finale. I didn't like it. It's really sad for me to say. I say it with a heavy heart, because Better Call Saul is definitely one of my favorite shows on TV today, if not the number one favorite show that I watch with a feverish passion. And I was very disappointed with the finale, even more so than The Walking Dead, which will have its day, I assure you. But yeah, that finale was not where I was hoping this was going. In fact, I didn't even think that was where it was going to go. I just assumed that it was going to go kind of how we expected it to go, where we were going to get that big reveal of, Gus Fring and, something serious happening between Chuck and Jimmy. But that didn't really transpire. I mean, we did have a couple of really good scenes with Chuck and Jimmy. We got to see the flashback of when they were, watching over their mother in her last moments when Jimmy left. And that was a great scene. I once again, props to the actors for such fantastic performances. Michael McKean, as always, is he brings such a humanity to Chuck, and it's very hard to hate Chuck because in many respects he is right about Jimmy, even though he is the linchpin in what makes Jimmy go the route that he is currently going. It's still, you can kind of sympathize. Even though he is a total jerk, you can sympathize with him very much so. But at the same time, he's still Chuck, and we still really, really dislike him because he's always going against Jimmy, and he never will give Jimmy that chance. And if he just would, that Jimmy would, turn away from this dark path. But of course, we already know that's already set in stone. But still, really fantastic scene. I enjoyed the opening scene and a lot of the stuff with Mike. Mike is just always fun to watch. In many respects, this series is a start of darkness for Jimmy, but it's also very much an origin story for Mike. And that was just one of the many great strengths of this series, is how they keep on flip-flopping back and forth between Jimmy and Mike and how they approach problems. But still, I felt like with this finale, it didn't have that punch, especially Mike's side of the episode. It was very lackluster. I was extremely disappointed, and probably more so than I was with the ending of this feud between Jimmy and Chuck. I was expecting a lot more from the writers. Because these are some of the best writers in the business today. Let's just get that out of the way. They are very, very smart, and no doubt they do have plans, but I just couldn't shake the feeling like this entire season has been kind of, one step forward, two steps back. We had the beginning with, at the end of season 1, Jimmy has finally, kind of shed that idea of himself being a reputable lawyer, only to see in season 2 that he does come back, and he has a really good reason. It's not like they're haphazardly pulling the character in the direction they want to go. They do have really good reasons. It's understandable, but again, there just wasn't enough there. And again, going back to the finale, there just wasn't enough there. In fact, I would argue that this finale didn't feel like a proper season finale. If anything, it would have been better as like a mid-season finale, or just like the end of an episode before the big the Big Bang episode, But yeah, so yeah, I was extremely disappointed. I don't know how else to elaborate on the feelings that this finale gave me. There just wasn't enough of it, it seems, which, I mean, that's always the case with Better Call Saul because you just want more of it. That's how good this show is. Just to make clear, I love this show. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like the problem here is that either I was expecting too much of the show or the show just wasn't delivering what it usually does. The first season, in my mind, is still superior. Even though we did have some solid episodes this season, I just couldn't help but shake the feeling like it was weaker. They were definitely going for the slow burn, and throughout this entire season, I was thinking, okay, we're gonna have this slow burn. We're gonna take things slow. It's a bit frustrating, but let's see where they take it. Let's see where the season finale leaves us. And the fact of the matter is that the season finale was the same. It was the same as every other episode that left me frustrated. Only now we have to wait for season 3 to resolve these issues, to actually deliver on what the show has been building up to. Let's talk about that scene. And this scene is, of course, the scene with Mike going to take out Hector Salamanca. I enjoy that scene thoroughly. It was a very good scene, well shot. Once again, Better Call Saul continues to be the most beautifully shot show on television. Props to the cinematography. But again, it was very tense. I was wondering what was going to happen. And that's one of the great things about this show is that even though it's a prequel, it still leaves you wondering what's going to happen next. Even though you know the end, they are always throwing in twists and turns to keep things interesting, and that's a really, really great strength of this show, in spite of its prequel nature. And yes, Mike wasn't able to take the shot. Nacho was in the way of the shot the entire time, almost as if he knew. It was obviously, I seriously doubt that Nacho even knew, because again, Nacho just assumes that Mike is the kind of guy that doesn't go that full measure. He's, at this point, Mike is, to him, a half measures kind of guy. But to see Mike actually finally decide, like, okay, I need to do something about this before it gets out of hand, I was really excited. But then you hear that horn, I was like, oh man, something big is gonna go down, something huge. And then of course he goes to see what happened, and there's the stick wedged in the car horn and the note in the windshield that just simply says "don't." But I honestly, like, even though it was a great shot, it was a great scene. Again, that was the last we really saw of Mike, which was extremely disappointing. I have expected him to, like, go home and then have Gus Fring waiting. That was the one thing that I think everybody was looking forward to seeing, especially since, if you people don't know, and I'm sure that a lot of you listening to this do, is the fact that a person discovered not that long ago that the episode titles, the first letter of each title of each episode, when arranged properly, says "Fring's back," and it harkened back to Breaking Bad's hint at the plane crash in, I believe it was season 2 or 3, I forget which, but so it was a great little Easter egg. And even though I'm pretty sure that Easter egg, it's true, I would say it's still true, because who else would know that Mike was even out there? Unless, it had to be somebody who has a deep interest in Hector Salamanca and doesn't want some random guy to take the shot that he's gunning for. So I have no doubt that was Gus. But the fact of the matter is that we should have seen Gus. And I think that's probably the biggest problem with this episode, is that we don't see Gus. And sure, I'm pretty sure that the actor Giancarlo Esposito. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm pretty sure that he's a very busy man. They might not have been able to get him at the time. I'm not sure, but in either case, they should have had somebody show up. At least have the name come up. That would have been enough, I feel. But without that, it felt like another cock tease. And that's pretty much what this entire season has been doing to us, is just teasing us with major things are going to be happening. We don't know what, but it just keeps on like building up this tension. I mean, some of the best parts of this season were, even though they were slow burns, like it was always in the back of, at least in the back of my head, okay, yes, it's a slow burn, but it's gonna have that punch. We're gonna have that punch, and it's gonna be glorious. And the finale just didn't reach that for me. I don't know if it reached that for any of you, but that is my take on this finale. It just didn't deliver, and it's a punchline and a long and somewhat dull joke that this season has become, really, because like I said, I've been very frustrated with this season. Not to say that it hasn't been good or anything. No, this is still a solid series. They still have really great performances, but I still just found myself more and more frustrated as the episodes went on. Starting from the very first episode, which I guess will just get us into just the overall review for this season. So the first episode, great opening, great shot of Gene in the Cinnabon. I always enjoy those scenes, if only because they show us a world beyond Breaking Bad, beyond Walter White, and it's interesting to see something like that. But still, I was a little hesitant to kind of go along with the idea that Jimmy was just going to turn back. And again, like I said before, it made sense why he would go back to Davis and Maine. It had a really good reason, and even though I was a little hesitant, I was a little disappointed because at the end of season 1, I was thinking, this is when Saul's gonna start. We're finally gonna see Saul. Because the entire first season was building out to that. We had that issue of Chuck trying to have Jimmy not use his name for his own law firm. There was a lot of like little hints here and there that like it was going to be pushing Jimmy away from not just Chuck but his own name. And I was expecting the second season to kind of be the actual like rise of Saul. But we didn't really get that, and it's understandable. They have at the point of season 1 like 7 years before they get to Breaking Bad, so it's okay that they're taking their time, but at the same time, this season again, it just felt like they were grinding their heels. Forward momentum is what I felt that this season lacked. That's a very good way of describing how I feel, is that there wasn't enough forward momentum. We were just stuck, and it very much is also like a clever way of like showing how Jimmy feels at Davis and Maine. Like he's not, he doesn't have that forward progression that he felt he had when he was just, back to Slip and Jimmy. However, I was at least hoping that we would get to see a little bit more shenanigans out of him. Just, either working more with Mike on the side like he did in Squat Cobbler, which was probably one of the better episodes of the season. What a fantastic episode. But again, we just didn't really see much of that. In fact, this season I felt didn't have a lot of Jimmy. We focus a lot on Kim, which I didn't necessarily mind, but at the same time, it did frustrate me because it seemed to devote a little too much time to her. I mean, I feel like we had maybe a couple of episodes. I know we definitely had like one main focus episode, which again didn't bother me, but at the same time, it just seemed like the most of the season was about Kim and how, and having the writers, get her into the position that they want her to be for the future. because I honestly don't remember much of Jimmy in this season. All I know is that he hated being at Davis and Maine. He did the commercial. It it got him in trouble, and eventually it led to him finally just quitting. Um, but again, there were just few scenes of Jimmy, and again focusing a little too much on Kim, which I I just, even though I enjoy Kim as a character, and she's well acted by Rhea Seehorn. Again, fantastic acting. It just it just seemed like there wasn't much of a focus this season, and the season just was dragging its heels, no forward momentum. Um, and it felt like a lot of setup, and that's why I was so frustrated with the season finale. Was that okay? I get this. You're explaining Kim's side of the story, and you're showing us what makes her tick and why she's doing this, and putting her into a position where she's gonna be greatly affected by Jimmy's actions, but we never see that. We never get the payoff. I half expected, Kim, after hearing about what happened to Chuck, in the second to last episode, to finally kind of come to the realization that maybe Jimmy isn't, maybe Jimmy is a little bit toxic. Maybe what he does isn't okay. And if you're gonna focus on Kim, then focus on Kim. Commit. Even though I argue that again, they should have focused more on Jimmy. But if you're gonna do something like that, then at least make it worthwhile. And that was just a thing that never came to fruition in this season. It just never actually realized anything apart from just building things up. I mean, we did get some really great scenes. I feel like I feel like I'm in a love-hate relationship with this season, because again, it's a great show, for very good reasons. You have a really smart team, but again, it just didn't go anywhere, and that's the most frustrating thing. Because again, you focus too much on Kim, and didn't really bring much out of that apart from the fact that now they're working together. But even in that respect, like the culmination of the feud between Jimmy and Chuck, that ending to the season finale, that should have been like an earlier episode. Like I said, this feels like a mid-season finale here. Like we're just halfway through the season, which is extremely disappointing. And going back to Mike, I would say, out of all the plots in season 2, Mike's is the strongest. If only because it feels the most like Breaking Bad, because Mike is definitely dealing with more characters that are from that show, and he's dealing with the Salamancas, and he's definitely more into the criminal element than Jimmy is at this point. Even though Jimmy does come in every now and then to kind of pull his chestnuts out of the fire legally, we have the fantastic feud between him and Hector Salamanca. The increasing just tension in all those scenes, culminating in the scene where Mike he tells him to fuck off, in terms of admitting that the gun that Tuco used was actually Mike's, to kind of ease the sentence. Having that culminate with the arrival of the cousins, that was a fantastic reveal. I enjoyed that. That was like, you see the cousins on the rooftop, and they're just staring at Mike's granddaughter. That was just the most chilling scene, and if again, it felt 100% like Breaking Bad. I mean, you see them, and that their theme comes in, that dark rumbling theme that they have, that you hear in Breaking Bad. It just came back and immediately was like, yes, this feels like what we know and love. And that was a fantastic scene. And of course, that's when Mike finally kind of realizes, okay, I need to take this a little bit more seriously. And he finally does go, and he does what the Salamancas want. And again, Jimmy helps him out with that. It kind of helps ease any potential problems with that. And there was a great like dialogue between them after everything is said and done at the courthouse, where Jimmy, he leans over to Mike. He's like, "Look, I ran into Tuco as well, and he's nuts." I was hoping that was going to kind of feed back into Mike's problem, and then maybe he would have Jimmy. He would have to have Jimmy come back and try and talk things through, and Jimmy would have to kind of go full on Saul like he did in Miho back in season 1, talking down Tuco. But we never got that, and that was another problem with this season, is that there just wasn't a lot of overlap between the two plots. With Jimmy and Mike weren't working together as much. I mean, they still had a couple of scenes, but honestly, like, some of the best parts of this season were with Jimmy and Mike, and when they were working on a similar goal. Again, I go back to Squat Cobbler, probably one of the well, not Squat Cobbler, but it's just called Cobbler. But that episode, probably my favorite, not just because we do get that that camaraderie, but the kind of heated camaraderie between Jimmy and Mike. But not just that, but we actually get to see a bit of Saul, and that's probably one of the more enjoyable aspects of like any real episode of this series, is when we do see Jimmy slip into the shoes of Saul and he starts talking like how we know Saul does. When we get those little hints and breadcrumbs of the man that we will come to know in Breaking Bad, that's when the show really shines. Yeah, I would definitely say Cobbler is probably one of the better episodes of this season. Of course, you have quite a few like fun moments in the season, like when Jimmy is trying to get fired from Davis and Maine. That was enjoyable. Just some lighthearted antics to kind of lighten the mood, especially with Mike facing such dire consequences for his actions. It's always nice to have a bit of brevity, which this show definitely has more of than Breaking Bad. Not to say that Breaking Bad didn't have its fun moments, but Better Call Saul definitely allows for more comedy, because Saul is such a funny character. But even then, it's just, at the end of the day, I just can't say that this was, the show at its best. We had inklings here and there that were really fun and enjoyable, but nothing that really like hit home like the first season did. We didn't get that big like reveal like we had in season 1 with Chuck. We didn't have an episode like 5-0, which was a serious failing, I felt. We didn't really have much of an episode that like focused on Mike or another character apart from Kim. Kim had had an episode that focused a lot on her, if not a couple. But it didn't provide much. We didn't get to see like a new side to any real characters, and again, they just didn't have that impact. Like again, 5-0 is probably the best episode of Better Call Saul thus far, but even still, the main issue that I have with this season is little to no forward momentum. In fact, it kind of moved a little bit backwards. We're kind of back to Jimmy trying to be a respectable lawyer again, even though even Jimmy kind of knows that that's not what he's cut out for, or he's not willing to do, especially with Chuck still affecting him so much. I don't know. I was expecting a lot more from this season, maybe more than I should have. Maybe it's my fault. I'm not saying that this isn't a bad season. It's definitely, I mean, compared to some other shows, especially a second season, you can do a lot worse. But I could argue this show should have done better. If only because we know they can do better. And I don't know if it was because they didn't want to go in the route we were expecting, if they were trying to usurp our expectations, or or they had some other plan. Fact of the matter is that there was just too much buildup and no real release, and now we're stuck waiting for a third season to kind of, you know, answer our questions, give us some sort of release, because yeah, this season was just a major case of blue balls for me. If that's a metaphor that I can that's like the best metaphor I can use to describe this feeling I have. I feel like I have a severe case of blue balls. um, but yeah, apart from that, um, it's difficult to say. I still love the show. I'm just disappointed with it right now. Probably more so than The Walking Dead, if only because I actually care about Better Call Saul. um, so yeah, I would definitely have to say this season would have to get maybe 3.5 stars out of 5. I'd give it 3.5 stars overall, because again, I can't I can't give it a 4 because it felt like it was grinding its heels and trying to keep us from actually going forward and doing things. It was so focused on other characters that I'd argue weren't as interesting as Mike or Jimmy. No offense to Kim, but you know, there's a reason why the show is called Better Call Saul, and it's because it's about Jimmy becoming Saul. And we didn't really get much of that. I mean, we did have a couple of really good steps, but again, there was just not enough focus on Jimmy. There wasn't enough focus on Mike. It was a very scattershot season, I would argue. And yeah, I would have to give it 3.5 stars out of 5 just for that. It's still a great show, still beautifully shot, still expertly written. The actors, you know, knocking it out of the park every single episode. But this season should have had more for us. If anything, we should have gotten Gus. That's all I have to say about it. So I guess that's it for my thoughts on Better Call Saul. I'd like to thank you all for listening. This has been the Nerd Relay. I've been Tom, and I will see you later.